Hello again, I'm Robert Fitton. If you saw my previous two videos, you know that I just made a recent score of a record collection, found out the information on Craigslist, got this great record collection, a lot of the records in near mint condition, some VG Plus ones in there, ended up being about $5 a piece. I did two videos already about the heavy metal, hard rock records I found that are from the late 80s. And so these are some of the other ones. Again, late 80s records, so I don't have a bunch of 80s gear on, just Venture shirt, spiked hair. Let's go, starting with this one. Could not believe this was in the collection. And again, mint condition. Look at the cover, how shiny it is. The record is the same way. Why Can't Tori Read, the early Tori Amos band from 1988. They only had one record, and this is it. Look how severe she is. She is holding that sword, by the blade. That's Tori Amos. Why Can't Tori Read? Why didn't they spell Read R-E-E-D? Because all these are spelled wrong. Anyway, yeah, this is a completely different sound for her. She did not like this album. She didn't like to talk about it when she had her own career going on. But I was still so glad to find this. I'd actually never heard anything but The Big Picture, which was the single, this first song on here. So I was glad to finally hear the whole thing. And I can see that it's not a bad album, though. It's just not what you expect. If you're a big Tori Amos fan, you love Under the Pink and Little Earthquakes and, her later stuff like that. This is a totally different sound. This is a much more commercial sounding record. This sounds like, kind of like adult, like alternative adult contemporary type of thing. You can hear a little bit of Tori Amos's personality coming out in a few songs, but it's the music that is really just very mainstream. Some of the songs start out like they might be kind of interesting, and then they go right into this basic late 80s, kind of early 90s, like I said, adult contemporary sound. But they are lively. It's great musicians on here. Matt Sorum from Guns N' Roses is the drummer on here. So great musicians, great cover, back cover. Again, mint condition. Why Can't Tori Read? I cannot believe that this was in the collection. Again, averaging out to be about $5. But so glad to have this. There's a couple of cool tracks on here. Fire on the Side is about as close as you're going to get to her sounding like her solo stuff from later on that we all know and love. There is a song on here called R.E.M, which it sounds like she's singing a love song to an ATM, like an automated teller machine. But it's R.E.M. But yeah, like West is the wind or whatever. Hey, ATM. It sounds like ATM. Anyway, wow is all I could say when I saw this. Snatch this right up. Wow, just could not believe this. In 1988, Why Can't Tori Read? It is officially in my collection, as is this one. A little bit different one, because if you love Tori Amos, you're going to love David Lee Roth. They go hand in hand. Sonrisa Salvaje. This is not Eat 'em and Smile. This is Sonrisa Salvaje. And I do not speak Spanish, but that is what this is. This is Eat 'em and Smile, the entire album in Spanish. Now, I knew about this release. I remember this coming out and thinking, okay, sure. Go ahead. Peter Gabriel did the whole German album. I think a couple of bands did albums in French. I love the Peter Gabriel one because I can speak some German, but I don't speak Spanish. So this was kind of lost on me. But it was interesting to hear the songs with completely different lyrics that I was not comprehending. The side of this is damaged. I know I said a lot of these covers are in great condition, but actually the side of this one looks like a wild dog, a sonrisa. I don't know how to say dog in Spanish. A sonrisa dog got a hold of this and chewed the side there. But everything else is great. Records near mint condition. But yeah, Yankee Rose in Spanish. All the titles on here are in Spanish except for Yankee Rose. But anyway, Sonrisa Salvaje, Wild Smile from David Lee Roth. Just a kind of a curio for me to have. I don't know if I'll keep that or not. I should really give that to someone who can speak Spanish and they can fully appreciate it. Believe it or not, I never had this. I got a lot of the Duran Duran, of course, Rio and 7, the Ragged Tiger, and I've even got the Arcadia and the Power Station, but I actually never had their debut album. A little bit of ring wear up here, not too bad, but the record again, near mint. This is the one with Girls on Film and Planet Earth, are two first singles. The Girls on Film, I definitely know that. I've got the Duran Duran Decade and the compilations that have those songs on there. But I wasn't as familiar with some of the album tracks on here, and they're great. I should have had this a long time ago. This is a great album. They kind of have that early sound. They've not quite got into their full Rio, Seven and the Ragged Tiger, Duran Duran full-on sound. This still has a few, like, just basic disco elements in it because it is like 1981, so they're still coming out of disco. They've definitely got their own thing going on, a little new wave in there, a little disco, get a little of this, a little new romantics, got the whole thing mixing up, and definitely got their own thing going on. Duran Duran, this is the 1983 reissue of this, so it features Is There Something I Should Know, which was huge after they'd been popular for a few years. Got a different, Duran Duran on here, a different cover photo. This is actually the one I wanted. So yeah, glad to finally have this, the 1983 reissue with Is There Something I Should Know? Because I don't think it replaces a song off of the original. I think it's just added on there. It's just like an added song that doesn't replace something. I know that the UK one has a song that's not on the US original, but maybe I'll get that at one point. But yeah, glad to have Duran Duran, the reissue of their debut. Sounds great, the sound quality is great, and it's just a really fun, upbeat, great record that I should have had a long time ago. Paul McCartney, Press to Play, from 1985. I remember when the song Press came out, and the video was all over MTV because it was right when I first got MTV. We first got MTV in like January, it was like December 27th or something of 1985. So we got MTV in 86, and Press was still being played. There's the gatefold there. That's pretty nice. This album I never gave a chance to because I hated that Press song. I thought it was awful, couldn't believe it. And I never heard any more songs on here. I know there were more singles. I don't think they got played. I think Stranglehold might have been a single in the UK. It never got played here. But yeah, this is okay. It's not as bad as I thought it would be. I think Press is probably one of the worst songs on here, so it's great that they released that as a single. But one thing I do like about this album, because I know this is critically panned, people don't like it. I don't even think it reached the top 20 on the album chart in the US. This was a flop. And but it's not horrendous. It's okay. One thing I like about it is that a lot of the songs sound different from each other. It's not the same sound. He's trying different things. He's trying to rock out on a song called Angry. It doesn't work. Helter Skelter was almost 20 years ago at this point. Stop. Paul McCartney doesn't rock out anymore. But yeah, there's a few things on here that are not too. They're okay. It's okay. It's all right. It's not as bad as I thought it would be, and that's the best thing I can say about Press to Play. There's goofy Paul McCartney moments on here, but you're going to get that on any Paul McCartney solo album just about. There's the one song on here where I think it's Talk More Talk, where it literally has talking in it, like clips of talking. It's not a Pink Floyd thing. It's not that cool. It doesn't work. But it's okay. And this is in mint. This looks like never been played, and I can probably understand why. But yeah. And this is great. Finally got some Siouxsie and the Banshees on vinyl. Tinderbox is their 1986 album. This is kind of where they get away from a little more of their punky kind of new wave sound and start getting into more of a later 80s sort of alternative, for lack of a better word, type music. A little more slickly produced. A little more, kind of a main sound through the entire album. But it's a great album anyway. I do prefer their earlier, more severe sounding stuff, and I've definitely got to get Kaleidoscope at one point. And I already have The Scream and a couple of others on CD. The Scream is probably the one I'm most familiar with their great cover of Helter Skelter, one of the few cover songs I actually really like the cover version of. Definitely better than U2's or Motley Crue's or whatever. But this is the big song on this was Cities in Dust. Your city lies in dust. Oh, that one. Yeah, it sounds just like her, right? Candyman is great. I mean, that's just a nice, consistent sounding album all the way through. Really takes me back to the 80s. And I found out a fun fact that I did not know. This tornado picture on the cover is the same tornado photo that's on the cover of Deep Purple's Stormbringer album. So there's a nice fun fact for you. A nice Siouxsie and the Banshees Deep Purple connection. But the sound on this is stellar. It's upbeat, it's energetic, but it still has that sort of haunting, you know, eerie Siouxsie and the Banshees quality to it. I mean, I think they're probably one of the only acts that can pull that off all at the same time there. But 8 songs, the songs are a little bit longer, but the album still seems kind of short. But yeah, great stuff from Siouxsie and the Banshees, but I still got to get Kaleidoscope at one point, hopefully, on a record. Siouxsie and the Banshees actually got 2 albums from them in this collection, and you know, I'm familiar with like I said, Kaleidoscope, The Scream, Juju, all those, Superstition, but I was not familiar with this one at all. Through the Looking Glass, didn't know what this was. This is the follow-up to Tinderbox, and I found out that it is a all covers album. Yeah, and I just did a video not too long ago about, well, I guess the video was more about tribute albums, sort of the opposite of cover albums, where different bands will do one group's songs all the way through, like a tribute to Van Halen or a tribute to The Doors. So this is a cover album, which is the opposite of that, one band doing a bunch of different groups' songs. So this isn't too bad, though. I actually enjoyed this, and I like the way that, I mean, I'm sure this was just as rushed and thrown together as any covers album, but they really sound like they've taken their time, tried to make each song special, and a lot of the songs, especially the ones on side 1, really kind of harken back to their earlier sound. So you get a little more diversity on this one than on Tinderbox, which I really like. Hall of Mirrors, the Kraftwerk song, great version of that. They do the Sparks song to start it off with, Town Is Not Big Enough for the Both of Us, which, again, it's going back to a little more of their early sound here. Some of these I was not familiar with, like Gun, which is a John Cale song, I guess, and Sea Breezes, which is Roxy music. I was not familiar as much with those songs, but they sound great when Siouxsie and the Banshees does it. Your Lost Little Girl, the Doors song, it's okay. I like, you know, obviously I like the Doors version better. Wheels on Fire, Bob Dylan, do a decent cover of that. Trust in Me is this, you know, sort of like nightmare lullaby. It's like one of my favorite tracks on here. And I was not familiar with that song either. So I don't know the original of that, but the Siouxsie and the Banshees version of Trust in Me is like the best on here. So I think I don't even know myself anymore. I think I actually like this covers album better than I like Tinderbox. Yeah, I don't know. The one thing, The Passenger though, the Iggy Pop song, great energetic version of that. They even have a horn section, which I don't mind, which I don't know what's happening to me. Now I don't mind the horn section. But the one thing on here, Strange Fruit. That's, yeah, don't do Strange Fruit. Unless you're Billie Holiday. That's a Billie Holiday song. Don't, no. Don't do Strange Fruit. That's not for you. Don't do Siouxsie, no. Siouxsie, no! Don't do Strange Fruit. Oh, but her version is haunting and beautiful. Don't do, you know what I'm saying? Don't do Strange Fruit. That's a particular lyrics for Billie Holiday. Billie Holiday should be doing Strange Fruit. That's not a Siouxsie and the, no. It kind of sounds irreverent when they do that, and that's a very serious, it's a very serious song. And don't do Strange Fruit. But enough of that. Let's talk about some soundtracks. Since there were so many great soundtracks in the metal videos, there's also some good ones in this one, like Dudes. I don't remember this movie. I remember I saw it when it was first out on video, but I don't remember it. I think these two, John Cryer and this other guy, were like traveling cross country or something like that, and they get stranded in the desert in like Arizona or something, and there's killers looking for them, and they're punk rockers in the desert, or I don't really remember. But the soundtrack is pretty decent stuff on here. It starts off with Keel. Remember the heavy metal band Keel? And Rock and Roll Outlaw. I'm a rock and roll outlaw. It's that kind of thing. See, I thought this was going to be more like a punk soundtrack. It's really more like it should have gone on the other videos. It's more like a heavy metal, 80s metal thing. The movie came out in 87, so the songs are all around there. It's got just a thunderous version of Megadeth's These Boots Were Made for Walking. There's a super speedy version of that. It's got the punk band Lethal Weapon doing Time Forgot You. There's a few tracks on the Vandals have a song on here too. It's kind of got a cowpunk thing going on in some of the tracks. There's no straightforward punk rock. There's, like I said, there's the late 80s metal. There's a little bit of cowpunk going on to the point of almost like novelty. Who else is on here? We got, oh, wow, Jane's Addiction was the real surprise with Mountain Song, but it's not the version that's on the Nothing's Shocking album. It's like an earlier version that I don't know where it comes from, but I guess it's on this soundtrack. But yeah, Mountain Song with an earlier version from Jane's Addiction. I was really surprised to hear that. You got Steve Vai wrapping up the whole thing with an instrumental version, just his guitar, doing Amazing Grace for like a minute and a half. That wraps up the album. There's just really cool stuff on here. A lot of kind of forgotten people on here, but yeah, I was really surprised how decent of a listen this is, and kind of varied sounds throughout. But it is not a punk rock album like the Mohawk would suggest there on the one guy, the Dude soundtrack. Directed, the movie was, by Penelope Spheris, who also, of course, directed Decline of Civilization movies 1, 2, and even 3, which mostly 3's been forgotten about. Also, man, she directed so many things. She had that, what was that one, Suburbia? All these punk rock type movies. Another movie soundtrack, Bachelor Party, starring Tom Hanks. Remember this from 1984? This soundtrack, the movie, it's the opposite of that one. Like, the movie's much better than the soundtrack. The soundtrack's okay. It's really short. It's really kind of quirky. Some quirky stuff going on here. There's 2 Oingo Boingo songs because it's an 80s comedy, and there's got to be some Oingo Boingo, so you get 2 on here. I think there was actually 3 songs in the movie. The Flesh Tones are a part of this. You got Jules Holland with some solo work on here. You got R.E.M. on here with a song called Wind Out that I believe was from the Reckoning sessions. It's like an outtake song. It ended up on Dead Letter Office. It's on here. You've also got Darlene Love doing Alley Oop. Her talent is completely wasted on that song. You can't even really tell that it's her. Love some Darlene Love and all the groups, you know, she sang for, kind of uncredited back in the 60s. She finally gets some credit on the Bachelor Party soundtrack, and it's not a very good song. Her cover of Alley Oop. Adrian Zmed, also in Bachelor Party, has a song on here. And I found out Adrian Zmed not only has a song on the soundtrack of Bachelor Party, he actually the same year had his own EP out, like a 6-track mini album. Adrian Zmed, who knew? Who knew that he multi-talented, obviously. So yeah, Bachelor Party, love that movie. It's the kind of 80s movie that, you know, just hilarious and just a riot all the way through. It's got those scenes that everybody, you know, Nick the Dick. Shout out to Nick the Dick. What was his, I used to know that actor's name because he was also in Lady Chatterley's Lover Part 2 or whatever. Was it Brett something? Anyway, shout out to Nick the Dick. And the 3D movie scene, the scene with, what was that, a goat or something like that takes all the drugs. Bachelor Party. You know what? I'll go ahead and say it. A better Tom Hanks movie than Forrest Gump. And that's no lie. And another soundtrack, say his name 3 times and it appears. Beetlejuice, Beetlejuice, Beetlejuice. And there it is. The soundtrack from Danny Elfman. And pretty cool stuff here. This is, again, pristine condition. Looks like it's never even been touched or played. And yeah, a lot of people want this. This is kind of a sought-after album. Kind of expensive. So I don't know if I'm going to keep this or pass it along. But, you know, a nice final. I remember the movie Beetlejuice. I remember liking it. I haven't really seen it in so long. I don't remember a lot about it. Obviously, Michael Keaton and, you know, Baldwin and I think Gina Davis and Winona Ryder and all those people. But, yeah, pretty cool to have this. Again, not sure if it's a keeper because it is just soundtrack music. Now, of course, Danny Elfman puts out stellar soundtracks, and a lot of people love his whole music scoring and all of that. But since this looks like it's never even been touched or played, I wonder if it's one of those cases, because I remember, especially when I was younger, some people would like really love a movie, and they would go out and get the score, you know, usually on a cassette, because they just love that movie so much, and then they play it and be like, well, this is just a bunch of music. It's like, well, yeah, that's what a music score is. It's not going to play the movie or dialogue, or it's just going to be the usually classical music from the movie, and they'd be like really disappointed. It's like, well, that's what a score is, and that's what this is. So Beetlejuice, yeah, again, man, that is in really excellent mint condition thing there. I mentioned before that, you know, a lot of these in this collection are great, some of them not so great, and some of them I've already had before, like another soundtrack I've already had for years and years, Repo Man, so Gonna pass that one along. Great soundtrack, a lot of punk stuff on there. Aerosmith, Pump. Cannot believe I got these for so cheap. Again, excellent condition. I already had that though. Frankie Goes to Hollywood, Welcome to the Pleasure Dome. Already had that. And then there's stuff that I take one look at it and I know, don't have to listen to that one. I know I do not want it. Like Def Leppard, Hysteria. This is a no for me. First of all, this is a 62-minute album on one record. I can't imagine this sounds very good. Sonic quality, and then it's Def Leppard Hysteria, so quality, I don't think it's going to sound very good, if you know what I'm saying. This thing is loaded with songs that I've had to play on the radio over and over and over, and Animal, and Armageddon It, and the title track Hysteria, and Love Bites, and just, it goes on. And the worst of them all, oh my God, I think I'm the only person in the world that disliked that song the first time they heard it and never grew to like it, had to play it over and over again on the radio, had to play it in the strip club. The cat doesn't like it. He doesn't even like to hear me talk about it. I'm sorry, but, you know, had to play it in the strip club. I don't know if I've told that story on here before. I made so many videos at this point, I can't remember what I've talked about and what I haven't, but back in the strip club days, there was a rule that, you know, each stripper got to have their own signature song. Now, they could dance to all kinds of songs, but each one had one song that was their song and no one else could use it. So they would come out and this would be their song. So two of them wanted Pour Some Sugar on Me. So I came out with, there was going to be a fight. I mean, they were both serious. They wanted that this was their song. Damn it, no, it's my song. No, it's my song. No, you can't have it. No, blah, blah. And I said, well, actually, there's two different popular versions of that song. There's the single version. There's the album version. One of you can have one. And I actually just stopped a huge fight from happening. They both wanted the different version. So it worked out really well. But then thinking about it, it's like, well, maybe I shouldn't have said that and made them fight for this. There could have been like a cat fight on stage. We could have charged double. But yeah, Def Leppard, Pour Some Sugar on Me. Wow, that's a terrible song. Pour some sugar on me. I changed format, get out of rock radio, go into adult hits. What do I have to play? Pour some sugar on me in the name of love. Oh my God. I don't really want that Def Leppard album. I've always liked this song though, Big Country, In a Big Country, and this is their album called The Crossing. I never had this album. Even though I really love that song. First time I heard that song, I remember it was Friday Night Videos when I first heard that, and immediately liked it when I was like 10 years old, back in 1983, and really liked that. I love that guitar. I liked the whole song. I didn't know who a lot of those bands were, but I didn't know who Big Country was. But something in my 10-year-old mind said, don't waste your birthday present on this group because they're called Big Country. They've got a song called In a Big Country. They're going to be a one-hit wonder. And sure enough, I was right. I hadn't heard of Bad Company at the time. But yeah, I know they had another kind of minor hit in the U.S. called Fields of Fire. That's on here too. But this is not a bad album. This is a pretty good listen all the way through. That guitar sound is in a lot of these songs. The songs are kind of similar. They don't branch way out, but it's a decent album. I'm glad I finally got to own this and hear it after all these decades later, the Big Country. The problem is, the big disappointment is, the very first track, the song I used to love, still do, In a Big Country, on here, it is some sort of nonsense remix. And I don't mean like a hit remix like Cyndi Lauper's She Bop, the single version, or, you know, Never from Heart or something like that. You know how in the 80s there was a lot, the 45 version or the video version was a remix and it was a little pumped up, you know, sounded different than the album version. Or sometimes, you know, a lot of times the album version was just longer. That's not what this is. The In a Big Country on here is one of those god-awful 80s dance remix, like an Arthur Baker type thing, where like the first thing you hear is like a sample of the bridge of the song. And then you get this, you know, drum track edit thing, and it's just off. They were usually 12-inch dance mixes. You know, they weren't on the album. They were like 12-inch singles. But for some reason, they decided to put that version as the opening track on the album, and the real version of In a Big Country is not on here anywhere. I did some research. I believe the actual version is on like the UK and the German pressings and, you know, that. So if I ever run across one of those, I will get that, because I want the real version, not this stupid, in a big country. I don't want that nonsense. I cannot stand that stuff in the 80s when they were doing it to songs. I can't stand it now. It's totally obnoxious. So I want to get the UK one and get the real version of In a Big Country. I do not want In a Big Country, country. Okay, they really don't mix it like that, but it's that type of, it's that type of mix, if you know what I'm talking about. R.E.M. I didn't have any R.E.M. vinyl except that dumb orange 12-inch single that I had for that one song from Reveal that I've already gotten rid of. But I was glad to finally get some R.E.M. on vinyl. I got a lot of their CDs. I really liked R.E.M. in the 80s. But I ended up with Fables of the Reconstruction, which is okay. It's not my favorite. Just like the David Lee Roth, it's got like a thing here where the spine's been scratched, but all these records are in terrific condition. The cover to this is like all sideways and upside down and reversed and everything. It's really confusing. It's an okay album. It's got Driver 8 on it. And then you get Life's Rich Pageant the following year. This is superior, in my opinion, to the Fables of the Reconstruction, Reconstruction of the Fables. Begin the Begins, great. Hyena, this has Superman on it as the unreleased, or the hidden track at the end. A remake of a band from Austin called The Click. They had their own song called Superman, and R.E.M. decided to dig up that obscure song and make it popular in the 80s. But The Click, actually, they did a few covers too. They did a cover of Tommy James and Shondel's song. They did a cover of 13th Floor Elevators back in '69, so they were doing covers as well. But this has, like, my favorite R.E.M., Fall On Me, is on here. Excellent song. I think that's the first R.E.M. song I ever heard. That is on here. There's so many good songs on this. R.E.M. has a tendency to kind of sound very similar with a lot of their songs. When you listen to an album all the way through, it kind of, there isn't like songs that jump out and sound completely different a lot. I mean, there's a few, but that's one of the complaints. But I think a lot of people who discover R.E.M. later on, the 80s R.E.M., and wonder why people like them so much and why they were so popular, it's because there wasn't a lot that sounded like this at the time. This is the mid-'80s, where everything is like, like keyboards and over-the-top fashion accessories and just bright colors and either that or loud rock and whammy bars and whatever and 12-inch remixes like I was talking about. These guys were like really early on in that like almost alt-country sound. So many bands would do that later that the R.E.M. kind of got lost in the mix. But these guys, at least for popular sake, were really kind of ahead of the curve on a lot of that stuff. They bridged right up to like jangle rock, which I don't like at all, but they kept it pretty authentic. And then this one, Document, their fifth album, stellar. I mean, Finest Work song is great. This has the two big hits that they had at the time before they became popular with all those Man in the Moon and, all that stuff later on, Everybody Hurts and all that. Their two big popular songs that were all over MTV were It's the End of the World as We Know It and I Feel Fine, and The One I Love, which are both on here. But there's a lot of great songs on here besides just those two big hits. By the way, isn't it technically illegal to perform the song The One I Love in a theater? Because he randomly just yells out fire. I believe isn't that illegal to do that in a theater unless there's actually a fire? Anyway, my little joke. I used to say that on the radio. Got a huge laugh. At least I think so, because I was on the radio, couldn't tell. But R.E.M. Document, really glad to have this one, especially on a record. Like I said, I've had the CD since the 80s, but it just seems so much more authentic now on vinyl. Wrapping it up with one more on this video, and then I'll have a follow-up video of the rest of the 80s non-metal, non-hard rock stuff that I got, and it is Billy Idol's Charmed Life. This is actually from 1990, so this is probably, one of the few albums in the collection that's actually past the 80s. I think this might be the only one. But this is Billy Idol. This was kind of panned and overlooked when it was out, and I certainly overlooked it. I had the CD like later on. Cradle of Love was the song that stuck around and, remained popular. Like the Cradle of Love, with its cringe video. But the album, listening to it now, and I did listen to it at 11 o'clock at night, that probably had something to do with it, I get a better sense of, I think, what he was going for. It's really like a late night mood type thing. It's not Rebel Yell. It's not the debut. I think that's what a lot of people were wanting. But he takes that Whiplash Smile album where it's kind of different and goes even further with that. And so he gets away from the kind of almost new wave-ish, punkish, pop punk type thing, and which he really kind of invented that whole like lane. But and gets away from that and gets a little more moody, gets a little more late night, a little more atmospheric. And I actually kind of like this album a lot more than I did when it was first out. I've reevaluated Billy Idol's Charmed Life. This is not easy to find on a record either. I don't think I've ever seen this record before. It's usually a CD. But he's got the cover version of Endless Sleep on here, which he does a nice job with that. Keeps the mood, you know, like I said, late night and eerie kind of thing. L.A. Woman was the other single, his cover of that. And that's where it was the big misfire. There was no reason for him to do L.A. Woman. He does not do anything for that song. That's a Doors song. It's always going to be a Doors song. Should not have done L.A. Woman. Doesn't really work with him. But yeah, some tougher subjects on here. Like I think there's a song about smoking crack. He's smoking something. And I don't think it's, by the way he's talking, it's marijuana. I think it's something higher up on the danger zone there. It's called Trouble with the Sweet Stuff. So I think it's crack. Or meth, or I don't know what he's smoking, but it's dangerous, whatever it is, and it would be hard for me to believe he would be talking about weed, you know, but weed's, you know, got the sweet, I don't know what he's talking about. You listen and decide for yourself. Some of the songs are kind of forgettable. It starts off really kind of unassuming with songs like The Loveless and Pumping on Steel, or they're just kind of, they would have worked more like in the middle of the album. One thing I noticed too about this album is he stopped doing his debut album had side 1 and 2, and then Rebel Yell had side 3 and 4. Whiplash Smile had sides 5 and 6. This just has side A and B, so he just dropped that whole thing. But Whiplash Smile from, or not Whiplash Smile, Charmed Life from Billy Idol, wrapping up this video. I got more 80s albums to talk about. It'll be a quadrilogy, and part 4 will be coming up, and then we'll wrap up this whole video series about this collection that I got off of Craigslist when I visited somebody in a storage unit, which is not the safest thing to do, but hey, you know, R.E.M. records were on the line. But, you know, I've got records from The Replacements, XTC, a bunch of great stuff coming up to talk about. Those and a bunch more. And so hopefully you will check that out. I know that when I do videos in 2 parts, usually part 1, a lot of people watch, and then part 2, not so many people watch. People do not like part 2s, but I'm going to make one anyway. So hopefully you'll check that out, and I will talk to you again next time.